Some of the following videos will cover more advanced topics, but for today, I'd like to jump in headfirst by building a tune together in under 5 minutes. I'll be using free software on a Mac, Garageband, and if you're not on a Mac, you can follow along with the same principles and workflows on free web-hosted software, Soundtrap or BandLab. Here's an empty Garageband session. Instead of using the keyboard here, I'm going to be focused on the loops. It's this little window over on the right. One way to start a tune is by identifying a particular loop that interests you. And I've already done that. So we'll take a listen to the string track. I thought it was kind of interesting, and we'll drag it over here into the edit region. I can get rid of this unused keyboard now. I will trim this first bit. Let's make a cool uneven number of measures for an introduction, which is how most pieces you're familiar with usually start. And then we'll let this trim out completely, and the top half of the trim tool becomes a looper. And so I can loop this through 2 iterations for my tune proper. I have an introduction and then a tune. I think we can slow down our tempo a little bit, get a little more groovy. We can also change our key to brighten up maybe the timbre of the strings. Within our string track itself, too, we're playing a lot of high notes. We can maybe get rid of some of the high frequency energy by taking a high shelf and just dropping the gain. This is cutting out some of the high frequency energy. Let's add a little bit of reverb while we're at it. We're used to hearing that with strings, and that might help the end of this as the loop suddenly ends. The reverb just gives a little bit of a smoothness to the end there. Well, our strings are playing lots of high notes, so we can balance that out perhaps with some bass notes. Here's a bass that I liked, and we'll drag that in and just trim it so that it's only happening during the beginning. Since we're on this track, we can also add a nice sub bass to help us end this, and I'll trim that so that it stops with the end of our strings. Note that this bass is panned right to the center. So we can add a plugin down here. I'm going to go under modulation. We'll add a spreader, which will help this have energy across the left and right sides instead of just in the middle, which makes it a little more interesting and might blend a little better with this orchestra, which is happening all around us. It's a very interesting track. While we're on bass, let's add some kind of bass that can just happen throughout this entire track. This was one that I thought was kind of interesting. Now there's going to be an abrupt moment where the introduction stops and the tune begins. To help smooth that out, I might think about kind of adding in my percussion gradually. So let's take a repetitive shaker track, and we'll have that start right where the tune begins. Here's what this transition from the intro to the tune will sound like. Very, very abrupt. Also, our shaker overpowers an entire orchestra, which is a little unsettling because that's not how we hear these instruments in nature. So I'm making my shaker a little softer. I'm also going to take this shaker and just bring it over maybe a little ahead of time, trim it out, and then we'll let the entire loop happen a few times through the end. I'd also like to hear a drum kit. There's our Galloping disco break. Big fan of this one. And I can take a couple moments here and trim this so that we hear a little bit of the end of this drum loop before the tune starts, and then we'll have it maybe not happen for these first couple beats of the new sub bass. I'll use the Command T function. It's here. Trim this out, and then I'll just use copy and then paste. Here I'm gonna give this new bass a little room, and then we'll paste it over here. I'd also like to hear maybe some kind of pad to tie everything together. pad is just a nice, long, slow piece of synthesized something. And let's hear some guitar to help mark the second section. Let's see how we've done. There we have a pretty cool tune done in around 5 minutes. Well, I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.